Hi, everybody. My name's Eric. I'm an architect, and all of the buildings that we work on are green. We don't have some green buildings and some non-green buildings because I never knew what to call the other ones. Are those the toxic ones, right? So we just force it on all of our clients equally, and it's worked out pretty well so far. I also realized something, that we as environmentalists have kind of been going about it the wrong way. We've been taking traditional buildings and then we just add stuff to it, right? We add solar panels and we add water features and stuff. And what we should have been doing is conceiving them as green buildings from the start, because a green building is a better building. A green building generates its own energy, cleans its own water, regenerates its environment. If you think about it, we can't afford not to build green buildings. So if you think about it that way, it's kind of a nice little switch. Now I want to start with a quote from one of my favorite poets, W.H. Auden, and he's got this great quote, and he said, "We are all here on earth to help others. What the others are here for, I have no idea." And that's kind of how I feel, because being an environmentalist, you kind of feel a little bit out of it, a little bit. And so in deference to this, I want to explain to you a concept that I call Dodo Sapiens. And that's the word that I use to describe us. Because we just do these dumb things, which don't make a lot of sense to me. We have these conflicting messages in our built environment, which is just weird. We spend a lot of time pointing out the obvious, which is kind of annoying to me. And we tend to destroy the very thing we're trying to protect. So we're just dumb, we're just Dodo Sapiens, and it just gets worse. We just get fatter and dumber and slower and stupider, and it just keeps going that way. And we know we have a problem with oil, we talk about it openly, our president says we're addicted to oil, and we don't really do anything, we just, it's kind of over there, so we're just Dodo Sapiens, our way of life is killing us, really, and that's really where we are. Evidence of this is just really the state of the current world, right? Every ecological system on the planet is in a state of decline, every single one. 36% of all species are threatened with extinction. And then as a direct result of our behavior, Arctic sea ice is at its lowest volume on record. And we know this, with data and science. And then as a direct result of that, sea level just keeps rising. And then mounted on top of all this mess is this added pressure of 7 billion people on the planet. So just in my lifetime, the Earth's population has doubled. And in my daughter's lifetime, it'll double again. So we're screwed, for lack of a better word, right? We're just every ecological system is just in a state of decline. You have to understand something. Nobody even invites me over for dinner anymore. I'm like Debbie Downer. Nobody even wants to hear from me anymore. All I have for you is bad news. That's all I've got. I'm sorry. Look at your faces. I'm sorry about this. I'd mostly just sit at home and, rock in the fetal position most of the time, and it's really it's just going to get worse. It's just going to be this and just a whole lot of the same. So I'm sorry about that. But we need to stop being Dodo Sapiens. Now, I've realized something. I get to lecture all over the country, sometimes the world, and I can't change your mind. In fact, it turns out that it's impossible to change your mind. Only you can change your mind. We call it motivated reasoning. It turns out we don't actually think like scientists. We don't gather up evidence to prove a hypothesis. We tend to think more like lawyers. We really just want to win our case. So that's what we've evolved to. We've got Homo sapien, and then boom, Dodo sapien right after that. And we just kind of a mess. And the problem is what I call short-term thinking. Because every decision we make now is based on the short term. What's it going to benefit to the quarter, We're not looking long-term at all. And this short-term thinking is pervasive through everything we do. Do you realize we now have three-dimensional printers capable of producing geometries we never even conceived of before? But our buildings still look like this. We have electric vehicles capable of running hundreds of miles on a single charge. But our buildings still look like this. We have digitizers capable of digitizing a room in real time, allowing us to manipulate them instantly. But our buildings still look like this. We have solar tracking devices that track the sun throughout the course of the day, converting it to light, heat, and energy. But our buildings still look like this. We even have a little device you put in your pocket that tells you when the hot donuts are ready. That's impressive. But the donut shop still looks like this. And the trouble is us. We're the trouble. You got engineers who think way too linearly, right? They prize efficiency over all else, so they're kind of useless. You got architects who are too timid to speak up and actually plant a vision for what needs to be done, so they're kind of useless. You got contractors who build exactly what you tell them to. Some of you won't get this joke. That's cool. You'll get it on the way home. You see, there's no door. Never mind. And then don't even get me started on the building officials. right? I put in a gray water system in a project. We take soapy water and we flush the toilets with soapy water. It's a good idea, right? Well, the inspector said, "Oh, you got to put up this sign." Who's that for? And totally straight-faced, he said to me, "Well, you know, dogs drink out of the toilet." And I said, "My dog can't read. Useless." But buildings are what need to change. Buildings are what must change because buildings have the biggest impact of all. Half of our carbon emissions come from our buildings. Einstein famously said, "We shall require essentially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive." So we need to stop being Dodo Sapiens. We need to stop with these conflicting messages. Do you realize we raise money for juvenile diabetes by selling candy? Do you realize how dumb that is? Do you realize that in the drought this past summer, people spray painted their lawns? This is a real thing. I didn't make this up. Do you realize that if you want to do this, this is good, this is okay. In fact, people might enjoy this. But if I do this, yuck, that's disgusting. How dare you? Not in my backyard. And that doesn't make sense to me. That's just baffling to me. If you show these logos to a bunch of 5-year-olds, they'll tell you what everyone is instantly. But they wouldn't be able to name these leaves. So we've become disconnected with nature. We've lost our touch with nature. And as a result, nature has just become kind of roadkill in the sign of progress. And that's just baffling to me because nature doesn't have pre-planned obsolescence. Nature doesn't have things that you need to replace. It doesn't work that way. Now, there's this great book, In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan, which I know a lot of you have read because we're in San Francisco. But it's a manifesto. It's a manifesto for how we should eat. And the best part is he put it on the cover. So you don't need to buy the book, right? It's right on the cover. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Wonderful, succinct, simple. And what I propose is a manifesto for our buildings. Build your buildings, not so spread out, and restore the nature we destroy in the process. Simple, easy, elegant. The way to do that is through what we call biomimicry. Biomimicry was popularized in this 2002 book by Janine Benyus, and it's really building the way nature builds. Because nature is an elegant designer. Everything in nature is in balance. Because after all, only mankind has global supply chains. Nature just builds with local materials. Only mankind uses CO2 as a waste product. Nature uses it as a building block. And only mankind consumes and consumes and consumes and consumes to the point of excess. And to be fair, this was the fattest zebra I could find, to be fair. But we just crap our buildings out anywhere. We don't even really think about where they go. But the results, if we follow nature's principle, are remarkable. They're just insanely beautiful. They're inspirational, really. They can change lives. This is right here in San Francisco, if you want to go visit it, by the way. And, you know, as I like to say, can you spot the green building in this photo? This is the future of building, the very near future of building. This is what we need to be doing. And now we have a whole generation of architects, designers, engineers that are understanding as much about nutrient flow as they are about structure. You have to realize nature has 3.8 billion years of research and development, 3.8 billion years of R&D ahead of us. And only mankind is arrogant enough to say, oh yeah, we got it all figured out. If we open our eyes to nature, we can find whole new structural systems, whole new typologies, whole new methodologies. We can find ways to make fragile materials strong, like the glass sponge. We can find ways to make cement with paper, the way the wasps do. We can find ways to make air conditioning without electricity, the way the termites do. And now we have a whole generation of architects that are looking at literally growing buildings, where we plant something and it grows and we live in it. And buildings that thicken up in the summertime to stay cool and thin out in the winter to let the sun in. Buildings that look like they could just take flight. Buildings that look like whole organisms where you can't tell the line between where nature stops and mankind begins. And buildings that you just want to crawl into them like little creatures and just nuzzle up and go to sleep. And what do we build? Yeah, that's pretty good. That looks pretty good. Hey, I got an idea. Let's cover the whole thing with known cancer-causing chemicals. Let's make sure none of the windows open, and then we'll put our kids in it for 8 hours a day. And then we wonder why test scores keep going down. So we're just Dodo Sapiens. We're just dumb. We need to stop this process. We need to stop bragging about our consumption. This is just dumb to me. This is my neighbor. He's a douchebag, right? We need to stop. We need to stop this. Arthur C. Clarke has a very famous quote, and in it, it's from 2001, and he says, any sufficiently advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic, right? And then Bruce Sterling kind of tweaked it a little bit, and he said it would be indistinguishable from its garbage, which is funny, but I have a better alternative. Any distinguishable advanced technology would be indistinguishable from nature, that in the future we won't be able to tell the two apart. They'll just blur together. That's my goal. That's what we're looking for. With that being said, that's my time. You can download these slides from here if you want. I'd love to hear from each of you. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.